ดีขอบคุณท่านสวัสดีครับ
ดีครับ
ที่จะคุยกับคนในวงในมันอาจจะต้องระวังกันเพราะว่าไม่กับ
Welcome to Talking Politics. With me today is Kun Sihasak Phuangketkeow, a former permanent secretary for Foreign Affairs. Thank you for joining this program, Kun Sihasak.
Thank you for having me on this program.
All right. So we all know that foreign policy was not an issue that politicians talk a lot about during the election campaign. But the fact is that foreign policy is going to be a major challenge for the incoming administration, right? Given the crisis in our neighbor Myanmar and other pressing issues in the region. PM 2.5 pollution, climate change. And not to mention the war in Ukraine and the escalating rivalry between two superpowers. So these are challenges laying ahead. But as far as you can see, is there any parties within these 8 parties that are forming a coalition that has a clear-cut policy in dealing with these challenges?
Well, as you said, during the election campaign, I think foreign policy was not on the main agenda.
Because we have to admit that politics is local, anywhere in the world, right?
That's right. But actually, I think more and more foreign policy does matter. Does matter to the lives of people, does matter to our security, our prosperity. But the question that you asked me, which party has been the more vocal? Obviously, I think if we read the press every day, the Move Forward Party have made a lot of statements about foreign policy, the direction of foreign policy that they'll be advocating. And I think, I agree, with these statements that we have to be more proactive. We have to be ready to take on these challenges. We have to have a clear-cut strategy on what we want to do, not just, stating goals and objectives, but having clear policies and to implement these goals. But of course, when you become the government, of course, how are you going to translate all these statements into implementation? And
that's a challenge.
That's a challenge. Yes. But I think on the whole, it's good that the Move Forward Party, which, if everything goes according to expectation, will be the core of the new government, is taking interest in foreign policy, because Thailand, I think, has a bigger role to play. And it's the expectation of many countries that Thailand should be playing a bigger role in the region.
No, it's very clear, and Kun Pitha also makes it very clear that he will definitely, Kun Pitha, the presumptive prime minister, he will definitely move away from the so-called quiet diplomacy practiced by the present government. And first of all, what is wrong? What do you think is wrong with quiet diplomacy? Is it okay under the present circumstances?
Well, when we talk about diplomacy, we have to be able to understand that there are many tools of diplomacy. You have quiet diplomacy, and which is, I think, important when you're dealing with sensitive issues. We cannot, go and make public announcement on this and that. But at times maybe we have to be more vocal. Yes. But I think the point that was made by Kun Pitha was that quiet diplomacy hasn't been working, right?
No, he said no words, no weight.
Well, I mean, in dealing with the situation like Myanmar, I think sometimes being the next door neighbor, we have to utilize various channels. Sometimes quiet diplomacy should come into play. Sometimes maybe on certain occasions we have to make public statements, making our positions very clear, especially when there are atrocities, violation of human rights. But at this stage, I think in dealing with the military, maybe quiet diplomacy is not a bad thing, as long as we're clear what we want to convey through quiet diplomacy. And this is why I'm a little bit concerned because quiet diplomacy without a clear, if it's not part of an overall strategy, it doesn't, and people will perceive it as not achieving any results.
All right, so Kun Pitha has said that his foreign policy will revolve around the so-called 3 R's, right? Revive, rebalance, and recalibrate. What is your take on these 3 R's?
Well, the 3 R's, I think, of course, they are key words, and different people will have different interpretation. And so, for me, I think the 3 R means, the 3 R means, first, reviving means being more proactive, and demonstrating that Thailand is ready to play the role that it's expected to play. Rebalance, of course, I think it's in the context of a geopolitical rivalry between the United States and China.
Not to be siding.
Not to be siding with towards any particular camp. And recalibrating, according to the statement made by Kun Pitha and I think Kun Phuadi, is that we should maybe think in terms of global issues, our global responsibility as well. But I think for me, what's important is making sure that our foreign policy is relevant, relevant to the agenda back home here in Thailand, which is economic recovery, relevant to the challenges that we face, whether it's Myanmar, the geopolitical competition between U.S. and China.
But if you were still with the foreign ministry and you heard what Kun Pitha just said, how would you interpret his 3 R's?
Well, I would interpret in such a way that that Thailand should play a bigger role.
In short,
Yes, and we have to show that Thailand does matter. But speaking alone is not going to achieve that goal. So we have to be very clear on, in terms of action, what we're going to do. And so I think that's important. I mean, having this announcement, of course, is good. Thailand is going to take our foreign policy, our role in the region, in the world at large, seriously. We're going to be proactive. But in the end, we have to show that our policy is indeed proactive through concrete actions.
Kun Phuadi Phitsuwan, the eldest son of the late Foreign Minister Kun Phitsuwan, is now one of the architects of the foreign policy of the Move Forward Party. And we talked to him, and he tried to offer some explanation as to what the 3 R's mean. He said that after the coup d'etat back in 2014, Thailand was shunned by Western countries. So Thailand was, in a way, forced to move more toward China. And now, by coming back to the present time, he thinks that it's about time that Thailand would move back toward he used the term, move toward the center, not to the other side. And what do you think should happen if this is the goal?
Well, I think we want to have, in principle, a balanced policy towards the major powers, in this case, U.S. and China. But of course, having a balance, being able to conduct a balanced policy also means that both the 2 major powers also see in Thailand an important strategic partner as well. So it's not just us suddenly moving towards, let's say, the United States.
It's not not only what we want to be seen.
Yes, that's right. We have to, the way that we can conduct this kind of policy is that both sides have to see the strategic importance of Thailand, and this is what we have to do. It's not just saying, oh, we're going to be friends, we're going to have a balanced policy, but they have to see the importance of Thailand as well, and that's why this announcement of the 3 R's, I think I take it in terms of having a proactive, making sure that Thailand makes our presence felt, and to show that Thailand does matter. Because I talked with an ambassador an important major power.
Oh.
And he told me that he was a little bit perplexed why Thailand is not playing the role that is capable of playing. We are the 23rd or 24th biggest economy in the world.
Yeah.
We're the second biggest economy in ASEAN. We are the founding member of ASEAN. We are located strategically in the heart of Southeast Asia, right? And we have a long tradition of diplomacy. You know, Thai diplomats are known to be very able, you know, and we have positioned ourselves well on many of the key issues. We've been, you know, a constructive force in international forums. And so, but in spite of all this, Thailand is not playing the role it is capable of playing. In a way, we've underperformed. So we have to ask ourselves,
where we went
why?
wrong? Where do you think we went wrong?
Well, a number of factors. Maybe our politics,
Okay.
you know. Second, our economy was not doing as well as before. Third, I think our foreign policy, we were, you know, more or less domestically oriented. You know, we've been sort of, I think, sort of looking at foreign policy from a minimalist perspective. Maybe managing it day by day. You know, sometimes maybe it's better to not be upfront. But I think for me, you know, if you expect rewards, you have to, you know, be willing to take risks and take stand on important issues.
There are critics who questions Kunpita's move forward party's foreign policy. They are afraid that this will open the door for interference by Western countries, of course, U.S. specifically. And when this has been this kind of comments have been quite prevalent in the past few weeks, ever since the election, and ever since it's clear that Kunpita would become the next leader. So what do you think he has done or said that give his critics that kind of impression that he would open the door for the U.S. intervention?
Well, as you mentioned, the rebalancing, as you mentioned, rebalancing towards the United States. But actually, it's not rebalancing towards the United States, but adopting a balanced policy towards the major powers. Maybe that statement is interpreted that way. Second, you know, this government, if it's led by the Move Forward Party, definitely will advocate a value-based foreign policy, democracy and human rights. So maybe they see that as a platform for the United States, or an opening for the United States to play a bigger role through, you know, in terms of democracy and human rights in Thailand. But I think that's probably going too far. Because I'm sure that whichever party comes into power or is at the core of the new government, we would want to take a foreign policy that is independent, right? That defends the national interest. But how we view the national interest, of course, will differ from government to government. So in the case of the Move Forward Party, I'm sure that democracy and human rights will be high on the agenda. But that should not be interpreted as, you know, moving towards the United States, because this is the value that the new government, if it's under the Move Forward Party, adheres to.
Okay. I'm sure that one of the biggest questions within the diplomatic circles this day is who will be the next foreign minister. When you look around, you see any potential candidate?
Sometimes we have people who are qualified, but maybe they won't get the chance to be ministers. But I think whoever becomes foreign minister becomes at a very crucial time, where we have to rebuild our foreign policy, our diplomacy, you know, putting Thailand back on the radar screen, and you know, and ensuring that Thailand plays a bigger role that is expected of us. And so I think that we need someone who has a fairly good understanding of foreign affairs, because sometimes foreign affairs superficially maybe for some it's not difficult, but actually it is. There's a lot of nuances, a lot of subtlety. You have to have your institutional memory to understand how the dynamics of issues. But again, if you rely on the bureaucrats, if they're we have competent bureaucrats, and if you give them the opportunity to perform, to present their views, to have discussion, I'm sure that there are many who can be the foreign minister.
Okay. Now, there have been calls for Thailand to play a more prominent role in ASEAN. We have been hearing very often these calls, right? So if Thailand want to do that, what should be the first step?
The first step is, actually being engaged in ASEAN, and helping to shape the direction of ASEAN. And this is where I think we haven't been performing as much as we should be. I have a friend, a former senior diplomat of an ASEAN member country, and he has told me many times that Thailand is the missing partner in ASEAN. Because ASEAN, for ASEAN to move, in his view, we need 4 or 5 key countries working together. First, Indonesia, definitely, because they're the biggest country, and they are considered, the Indonesians are considered the leader in ASEAN. Then Singapore, who's always contributing in terms of ideas and thinking, taking very forward-looking position. Malaysia, a leader in the Muslim world, and also thinking beyond their own country, thinking about ASEAN and beyond ASEAN. And then Thailand. Thailand was a few years back, let's say when you were a young journalist, right? Thailand was at the forefront.
That's
right?
true. That's true. Yeah.
On many issues, Thailand mattered, right? Thailand, people had to seek the views of Thailand. Reporters, when our foreign minister at that time, Air Chief Marshal Sid, came out of the conference room, everybody would be rushing to interview him. But lately, I think we sort of haven't been playing the role that people expect us to play.
All right. Thank you very much, Kun Sihasak. ขอบคุณครับ